I want to add a bit of whimsy and charm to this bland space by turning each rack into a miniature room of an imaginary wizard's tower, starting with a cozy library. I measured up the rack so I could slice up a cereal box to form the walls. It's going to be a pretty long, skinny room, but once it's filled with furniture, it should be nice and cozy. Trying it out, I managed to get a really nice fit. Bare cardboard isn't going to cut it though, so I whipped out my homemade hot wire cutter to add some details. The first order of business was to cut some nice floorboards that I then painstakingly laid out one by one. All this glue actually ended up warping the cardboard, so for future rooms I'm going to make the shell from foam. It should be a lot more rigid, and I'll be able to carve details directly into it instead of having to cut and glue a billion little pieces. We need a way of getting into the library, so I cut a door-sized piece of foam and carved some panels into it. I smoothed out the bottoms with some little rectangles of cardboard, then I could glue it into place. If you notice the wood grain texture on the floorboards, how very perceptive of you. A bit of wire brushing is all it takes. With the basics of the room done, I could start making some furniture to fill it up, and the most important thing for a library is, of course, a massive bookcase. I cut some more bits out of the foam and got to gluing it all together. I didn't have a good way of clamping these posts down, so I sort of just sat there until the glue hardened. Then I popped in all the shelves. To fill the shelves, I'll need some books, some very, very small books. I was originally planning on stitching these pages together, like I've done when making mini notebooks in the past, but that was already pushing the limits of my dexterity, and they're about 10 times bigger than this, so I opted to just glue the pages together instead. If I attempted to fill the whole bookcase like this, I'd be here for years, so to speed things up a bit, I carved the rest of the books out of some foam blocks. For a bit of visual interest, I hacked at a few of the books just to vary their size a bit. I also tried a squishing method which was much faster, but it kind of mangled the books a bit, so I went back to chopping. Slowly but surely I filled up the bookcase. To reach the books on the top shelf we need a ladder, so I used the rolling method to cut some skewers down to size. And you can thank me now because I've saved you the pain of watching me fumble around trying to glue all these tiny pieces together. A wizard's library needs a place to study the lore that fills the shelves, so I put together a sturdy desk. To keep the legs attached, I stabbed some little bits of wire into them, turning them into pins that I could stick into the tabletop. The pins weren't enough on their own, so a little dab of glue holds them nicely in place. Just like the books, a little bit of carved detail really helps sell the look. Then a bit more wire brushing for some lovely texture. No library would be complete without a cosy reading chair. I sketched up a design I liked and then got to work carving it out of foam. If you're ever doing something like this, take it from me that you want a nice sharp blade. Mine was pretty crusty and old, and you can definitely tell. In some cases it was so bad that I tore chunks out that I then had to refill. It didn't need to be perfect though, because it was all going to be covered up with some fabric. This fabric actually comes from my favourite pair of shorts that I wore so much that they started falling apart. Wrapping the chair was pretty hard going, like wrapping an awkwardly shaped present, only the paper doesn't stay bent when you fold it and you've got glue all over your hands. But very slowly I managed to get it into something that I was happy with. The glue really darkened the fabric and looked pretty funky, but luckily when the glue dried it really wasn't noticeable. To hide the seams, I glued on a bit of banding, which again, I didn't have a good way of clamping, so I settled in for a bit more holding. And behold, a comfy chair. With all those bits and bobs made, we can get our first glimpse of how the room is shaping up. Off camera, I made this little lamp, and the real book gets prime position on the table so you can see its pagey goodness. It's all coming together nicely, but the raw foam and cardboard aren't really as cozy as I want, so it's time to paint. The books were by far the most tedious part of this process because my sausage fingers just aren't well suited to the task at all, but by strategically painting clumps of books the same colour, it went alright. I did have a lot of fun painting the binding details though, which is a bit odd because it's even more delicate. I was a bit uncertain with how the books were looking until this point, but I think the details really tied it together. I got pretty carried away on some of them as well, to the point of adding covers. The wood parts were a real change of pace after the fiddliness of the books, just whacking on great globs of colour all at once. It wasn't entirely without its dexterity challenges though.
Ooh.
For the walls I wanted something rich and dark and ended up going with a nice burgundy. As a last bit of detail, I added some nail holes to the floorboards. Again, it's a bit tedious, but I think it adds a lot. Finally, with everything made and painted, I could put it all together. The end wall kept the back together nicely, but the same couldn't be said about the front. I added a supporting strut that, for some reason, I filmed for only about half a second. I also popped in this little painting, which if you're on the Discord, may be familiar to you. As a very last minute thing, I decided I should add some lights. As I add more rooms, I'd like to have them all lit together, so as a very temporary measure, I'm whacking in some mini fairy lights. After untangling them, I could then retangle them and sticky tape them into shape. If you're wondering, this one's for the lamp. With all the pieces assembled, I could finally put the library into place. Turns out that moving miniature furniture is just as annoying as the big stuff.
Oh no.
Next time, I'm definitely gluing everything down. For some reason, I thought it would be fun to be able to rearrange things if I wanted, but it's so fiddly that once I've got everything into place, there's absolutely no way I'm touching it ever again. And isn't this the coziest thing ever? Just chilling in a boring white kitchen in an unused wine rack is a room that, if I could fit in it, I'd spend hours upon hours in there with a nice cup of tea and a good book. I've had the best time putting all these little bits together for the library, and I can't wait to make some more. I've got a list of a few other rooms I'd like to build, but there are 13 more slots to fill, so if you've got any ideas for rooms, please let me know. Thank you so much to the members who help make all of this possible. Becoming a member is by far the best way to support what I'm doing, and you'll get a bit of behind the scenes content and get to watch all my videos early. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.